Hey guys, it's your favorite Autobot here, and welcome back to part 5 of What If Jazz from the Bayverse was in Transformers Prime. When we last left off here, Jetfire arrived a lot earlier in this timeline, and they were able to successfully get back Optimus here. But now we begin with something else, the relic hunt here. Now keep in mind, I will be adding extra relics here, and we will be seeing a shift in the war entirely here. Now, let's talk about it here. Our story begins on the Decepticon warship, with Megatron actually receiving a transmission signal from Shockwave. If you guys remember, Shockwave arrived in the last chapter here, due to the sheer fact that he should have been tracking space bridge anomalies the entire time he was on Cybertron anyway. He was doing it before for some reason, and it just made no sense he didn't come in Season 2 like he should have here. And keep in mind, Dreadwing is not in this timeline here, or was actually killed early, excuse me. So, with that being said here, yeah, let us begin here. Megatron receives the transmission thanks to Soundwave here, and actually goes up to pick up Shockwave here, to which all the Decepticons are pretty much ecstatic to see the Decepticon mad scientist back on their side here. And so Megatron simply asks Shockwave, "Do you have anything to tip the scales in our favor here?" To which Shockwave simply asks him, "Yes, I do, Lord Megatron, but if I may ask, why?" To which Megatron says, "I've been dealing with an Autobot from another dimension. He's grown powerful, and so I need something to be able to put him in check." To which Shockwave simply bows and says that then he will be returning to his lab on Cybertron. He simply looks at Soundwave, gives him a nod, and this is where Soundwave opens a portal back to Cybertron here. Now, the episode of Operation Bumblebee actually begins the same here, with Bumblebee, Jazz, and Optimus being the ones to go after the spark extractor here. And that pretty much goes the same, except when Megatron tries to go through his portal, Jazz simply blasts him with his crescent cannon, sending Megatron sprawling right back into his warship in a pretty hilarious fashion here. And so the Autobots are pretty much celebrating. But again, just like in the original, Mech captures Bumblebee and takes his T-Cog. However, here's a very big difference in this timeline here. They do not have access to Energon. They don't. Starscream is still with the Decepticons in this timeline. He was never, abandoned or left there to just die by Arachnid. That never happened. And again, Arachnid's not on her own anymore, meaning she never discovers the Insecticon hive. But don't worry, I will have that as a story point in the future, okay? So basically, the Autobots are essentially happy, but then again, they got to deal with this nonsense here. And so Jazz begins to think to himself here and actually begins to catch a little bit of PTSD from the first movie. You see, he and his Optimus didn't get along on this one thing, Bumblebee. You see, Bumblebee was captured by Sector 7, if I remember correctly here. And so Jazz wanted to save him, saying that they shouldn't be letting them, get away with just taking Bumblebee as if he's just some human experiment here. They should have fought. They should have got him back. But his Optimus said no. Again, a very big stark contrast between this Optimus and his. Something that Optimus even states that he would have fought for Bumblebee had he been there. To which Jazz says, "Don't be too hard on yourself, Optimus. No one could have saw that coming. Sometimes we trust too easily, especially when it comes to these humans here." And to which Sierra simply states, "Was that a direct jab at us?" To which Jazz simply states, maybe. You guys have been a little bit of a problem, especially Miko." To which Miko says, "Hey," and this actually does earn a laughter from some of the Autobots here. However, we have another situation here. Shockwave brings Predaking a lot earlier in this timeline than the original here. The scene takes place similar to where, Predaking pretty much enters the scene around on Darkmount, except it's on the Decepticon warship when it's stationary here. So this does mean that Shockwave does bring back Predaking. However, with Soundwave being able to decrypt most of the Icon databanks here, this is where Megatron dispatches two teams. One from the Shadow Syndicate, and he decides to take the Predacon along with him this time to go and get the second relic himself here. Might say, legendary, why are you having Megatron, be more active here? And my question to y'all is this: why wasn't he active in a relic hunt? You see, a good leader would actively be fighting alongside his troops here. You see, one of the biggest things that was a problem with Megatron here, he kept trusting his soldiers to do everything without him really needing to step in here. You're one of the most imposing figures and one of the most vital pieces in the war. If you don't get off your high horse and get your butt in that field by right now, you could have gotten so many relics, but you decided to be lazy or simply complacent in yourself here. Boy, if you don't get your... Nah, let me stop. Megatron needs to be active, especially with how everything's going now. Him being nearly killed by Jazz, him being beaten by Jazz while, Bulkhead and Wheeljack simply watched on here, and then being incapacitated by Jetfire, a formidable Autobot as well here. And so Megatron decides that he does need to be more proactive, not only for his own sake, but for his cause sake here. So essentially, Jazz's presence and his actions create a much more active Megatron, if you will, here. So, with that being said here, yeah, we get a much more dangerous Megatron in this timeline here, or much more proactive Megatron in this timeline here. So essentially, he's basically just like Optimus, as he should have here. If there's a relic, he will definitely take himself and a few Decepticons to go along with him here. And so, where does Megatron go here? Well, I would actually say him, Shockwave, and Predaking. Because again, I do think Megatron wants to see how Shockwave is capable of handling himself now, especially with this more robust built body. And so this is where, when the Autobots get coordinates for these relics here, Cliffjumper stays with Bumblebee in this timeline here. Because again, he's alive, and I feel like it is better for Cliffjumper to stay with Bumblebee than someone like Wheeljack, Bulkhead, or RC here. So this does mean we get some canon, teams here. Optimus takes Bulkhead and RC with him to retrieve the Forge of Solus Prime. Meanwhile, he puts Jazz in charge of getting the Requiem blaster here. And so, Jazz has to take Jetfire and Wheeljack with him. Boom. Already a golden team right then and there. Now, where would I have the Requiem blaster? I would actually have it in a volcanic environment. Maybe similar to Hawaii's volcanoes and stuff like that there. I think it would make sense here, considering the sheer fact that the Forge of Solus Prime is in a more peaceful and vibrant place here. Meanwhile, the Requiem blaster is in somewhere more violent and volatile here. A very similar way to how Solus Prime and Megatronus Prime's relationship was. And so, we would actually get some things canon here. Except instead of Knockout and Breakdown being there, they're along with Skyquake on this one here. So this means that RC does have to outmaneuver Knockout to get around the shield here, does hit him in the back, and engages with him. Meanwhile, Optimus takes on Skyquake, and Bulkhead and Breakdown goes roughly the same here. So, pretty simple and pretty straightforward fights here. But now I know what you guys are thinking. Legendary, get to the point. Yeah, I understand. So when the team arrives here, this is where Jazz immediately has Jetfire go scouting, while he and Wheeljack race right up behind him in their vehicle modes here. Again, showing his not only his quick thinking, but a strategic play as well here. However, when this happens here, Jetfire actually stops. And so when he sees Megatron, he sees him along with Shockwave here. However, when he relays this message here, he has to dodge a fire blast from the air. And so when he transforms and looks at what blasted at him, he looks in utter shock and fear. He sees Predaking, Again, still in his dragon form because he didn't discover the transformation ability yet here. But Predaking looming over him is something menacing here. If I had to say how this would be looking like, it would look like Quicksilver versus Balerion. Yeah, it's that terrifying altogether here, casting a large shadow over someone here. And so when Jazz and Wheeljack both look up at this here, they are in utter disbelief by this here. And so seeing that Megatron and Shockwave are just simply waiting for them here, this is where Jazz actually has a different play here. He'll take on the Predacon. To which Jetfire says, "You don't even know what that thing is." And this is where Jazz simply interjects and says, "You don't even know how to fight it either. But it's very clear I'm more capable than you." To which Wheeljack says, "If you two don't stop arguing while there is a giant dragon here, so help me, I will shove a grenade up both of your gas pipes." To which this does earn a laughter from the group here, but this is where Wheeljack and, well, Jetfire come up with a plan here. And Jazz actually relaying this here agrees with it here. So what happens is Jetfire darts towards Megatron and Shockwave here, with Wheeljack racing with him here. However, Predaking dies right after Jetfire as instructed here. Jazz, utilizing his magnetic abilities, latches himself onto Predaking and hurls himself onto the back of the dragon and begins to, well, try and choke it out. I know. Similar to how Captain America was trying to choke out Ultron. But what he's trying to do is see how the Predacon functions and works here. And so, realizing that it operates just like a mindless beast in a way here, Jazz begins to think of a way to beat the Predacon. And he actually gets his idea when he sees the lava spewing from the volcano. He's gonna hopefully bury this thing in it here. And so, utilizing his magnetic abilities at a much more precise range, if you will, here, he latches himself onto Predaking's wings and uses the magnetic field around it to actually guide Predaking into the volcano here. To which Megatron states, "Could the Predacon survive lava?" To which Shockwave says, "It should. It is one of the most powerful beasts in their history here." To which right now, they have to worry about something else, that being the Autobots here. And so, we see Jetfire engage with Megatron in the fight, while Wheeljack does his best against Shockwave here. However, with Wheeljack being a lot smarter and a lot more well-trained in his timeline, considering the sheer fact that Jazz has taken his time to train with a large majority of the Autobots here, yeah, Wheeljack is a much more strategic fighter here, actually not only outmaneuvering Shockwave, but slicing off the cable that connects the cannon to his back here or whatever here. So he slices that off and then proceeds to basically speed blitz Shockwave here, or speed abuse, excuse me. Meanwhile, Jetfire and Megatron is a very similar way to Ultra Magnus versus Megatron, except Jetfire is actually using a lot more hit and run tactics, and he has a lot more room to work with here, actually utilizing his flamethrower to create blinding light or blinding, effects on Megatron here, and actually getting some decent damage in here. But what about Jazz and Predaking? As Jazz guides him deeper and deeper into the volcano, he sees that the space becomes more and more cramped, something that he likes here. He hopes that the Predacon will break his wings here. However, the Predacon tumbles, and just before that, he and Jazz pretty much land in a very, I would have to say, compromising position, because again, Jazz is going to be underneath the Predacon. Jazz rolls onto his back, transforms, and drives deeper as the Predacon tumbles. This is where they reach a lava chamber. There's a bit of rubble, or what's the word I'm looking for? I guess you can say, stabilized platforms, rocky platforms in this area here. So this means that Predaking is able to get out of his little tumble area here, get through the more narrow parts of this cave entrance here, or the volcano entrance here, and then actually takes off flying here. And so Jazz, seeing stalagmites on the ceiling, begins to blast and bring them down all around them on Predaking here. And utilizing his greater speed and agility here, or at least his more combat maneuverability here, he actually begins to use the stalagmites to bounce off and begins to hit Predaking here. Understanding that the Predacon is far more durable than he is here, he actually utilizes this moment to actually use more, I guess you could say, strategical hits rather than just, regular ones here. And so Jazz begins to play with the Predacon in a strategic fashion, taunting it, causing it to crash into the wall here. And when it does that, Jazz takes this moment to even try to rock the Predacon here. But again, this is still Predaking. He's still tougher. He's still more durable here. And so Jazz decides to use his magnetic abilities to his advantage as well here. When Predaking tries to spew fire here, Jazz utilizes his magnetic abilities to use it to kind of control Predaking's mouth, if you will, here. Or control the mandibles on Predaking's mouth here so that he can shift the fire blast to somewhere else here and pretty much get in more free damage against Predaking. But again, seeing this is not working, he's going to have to resort to another tactic here. That being the horseback maneuver here. Now you might say, what do I mean by that here? So, Jazz actually wants Predaking to fly. However, the stalagmites on the ceiling keep coming down here. And so, Jazz decides to get underneath Predaking and utilizing the full force of his magnetic abilities, launches him towards the lava pit. And so, this actually causes Predaking, in order to save himself here, to actually fly. Something that Jazz wanted, as he again bounces off the wall, tackles Predaking on his neck, and begins to climb around him here while Predaking thrashes here. So, taking advantage of a bull riding maneuver here, he grabs Predaking by the more connection point of his wings, utilizing his magnetic abilities to control them once again, and tells Predaking, or forcefully makes him, to dive into the lava here. And at the last minute, he lets go and bounces off of his tail, transforms, and then drives the heck out of there here. However, unknowingly here, Predaking is able to still get out of here. However, it does take him a minute to really reel with the fact that, oh my god, he thought he was going to die. Wait a minute. He didn't die. What the? Oh, wow. He's really that overpowered, huh? To which this was be kind of starting Predaking's more cognitive thinking, if you will, here. And so when Jazz drives out here, he sees Jetfire engaging with Megatron and that he's on the verge of losing. So Jazz simply transforms and hits Megatron with a drop kick to the back here. And so Jazz and Jetfire begin to tag team Megatron just straight up. I guess you could say they are able to figure out their more, reliable moves on each other here. Meaning Megatron is just an experimental punching bag at the moment here. But again, this is still Megatron. He still does put up the best fight he can here. But again, he's against two of Optimus Prime's lieutenants here who are working well coordinated here. Meanwhile, Shockwave has had no other choice but to kind of play it smart with Wheeljack here. He can't brute force his way with this Autobot here. However, just before Wheeljack can get the upper hand, a tail slap comes out of nowhere, sending Wheeljack flying towards the group here. And so, this is where they see that Predaking is still alive. And he's pissed, literally giving Jazz a death stare, to which Jazz simply states that, oh, I might have messed up and not make sure he was dead. To which Jetfire looks at him and says, really, you think? To which Jazz says, look, to be kind of fair, it was a very complicated plan and he was worried about them here. And so this is where Megatron simply walks past them and grabs the Requiem blaster from its resting place here. And so this is where he points it right at them. And with little less than a single thought here, Jazz utilizes his magnetic abilities to create a barrier, barely withstanding the blast here, and well, yeesh, almost getting himself in a ER situation here. So, with that being said, the Autobots have no choice but to retreat here. But they retreat not only learning something, but becoming stronger as well here as a team. However, another change in this timeline. The Autobots get the Forge of Solus Prime after defeating the Shadow Syndicate once again here. So with that being said here, they have the Shadow Syndicate, or have the Forge of Solus Prime, excuse me here. And so they actually plan on using it to give Bumblebee some repairs here. However, during this episode here, Cliffjumper and Bumblebee were able to track down Mech, excuse me, thanks to Agent Fowler. So they were able to get his T-Cog back with little to no problem. And considering the sheer fact that Mech doesn't know about Energon, this sets them back completely here. Meaning that we may not even get a Nemesis Prime episode because, again, they don't know about Energon just yet here. And so, with that being said here, RC is clearly worried to see Jazz burnt and somewhat beaten up here from the Requiem blaster. To which Optimus understands that now with the weapons of Megatronus Prime in Megatron's hands, he's going to be a lot more dangerous than he expected here. To which Jazz says, yeah, by the way, could that actually fix me up here? He could really use it. To which Optimus says, of course. And so, utilizing the Forge of Solus Prime here, he actually hits Jazz, and well, it repairs him. Matter of fact, Jazz doesn't feel repaired. He feels better, way more than it was before. And this is where Jazz gets an idea and asks Optimus to wait a minute. And so he runs and grabs the Polarity Gauntlet and tells Optimus to hit him with everything he's got in the Forge. To which everyone looks at him like he's crazy. But then Optimus, actually seeing the bigger picture here, does it here. And so this is where when Jazz is knocked into a wall here and they look at Optimus as if he was crazy, Jazz re-emerges here with the Polarity Gauntlet's parts actually covering certain parts of his body. Meaning that he upgraded himself with the Polarity Gauntlet. And that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. So be sure to comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends. And I will be doing the rest of the relics, but this time focusing on more of the Autobot and human interactions with certain Decepticons. And yes, some certain Decepticons will be biting the dust here to kind of make the story a lot better here. But that's going to be all today, you guys, and y'all have a blessed day. And let me know what you guys think of Predaking showing up earlier to making things a lot more difficult for the Autobots as well here. Peace.